2, 1.
Hello out there in TV land. We hope the day you're having is grand. I've got jazz hands. Welcome everybody to the Homebrew studio. My name is Matthew and I am here to be your host. I use he, him pronouns, and as we dive today into our land of unbridled creativity and wild imagination, with me, ever present, is Logan. Logan, our stream producer. Please say hello to the people in chat today so they know you're here. Now, here on the Homebrew studio, for those of you who missed our last program a couple weeks ago, which was our first episode, we're now on episode 2, yay! Here on the Homebrew studio, our remit is to help burgeoning dungeon masters, game masters, storytellers, and so forth learn how to bring your own unique ideas into the role-playing games that you love. And the way I like to think about it is that we, as the DMs, are taking the game and transforming it into our game. That's what homebrewing is all about. And over the course of these streams, it's my goal to give you the tools, the tips, and techniques needed to do just that. We'll be in the studio for about an hour today, I think, and we have a very exciting topic to discuss. This week's topic is adapting material to fit an alternate setting. Specifically, we'll be talking about modern-day sci-fi and sci-fantasy settings, and looking at how we adapt our stock content, which has a very medieval fantasy flavor, to fit that new setting. But before we get into all that, Homebrew Studio is a new addition to the NerdSmith network. We'll be streaming each Wednesday at 5 p.m. US time, right here on twitch.tv/wearenerdsmith, with the exception of next week. We will not have a stream because of WonderCon. But other than that, we'll be streaming every Wednesday. We do appreciate you joining us. If you haven't already, please follow our channel. You just have to click that little heart button up there in the corner, and you'll get notified anytime that NerdSmith is streaming one of our fantastic programs. I'm only on one of them, but I think they are all fantastic. If you really want to support us, please go ahead and subscribe as well. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you have a Twitch Prime membership you can use every month. We really appreciate it. It means a lot to a starting network like us. Now, this week, we are going to start off our time in the studio with a segment called Homebrew Review. And what we're going to do is we're going to discuss a question that came up as a result of our last episode 2 weeks ago. Now, this question comes from Fennec, who, not sure if you are here in the chat today. I don't see you, but hopefully you will catch the VOD either here on Twitch or on our YouTube channel. And Fennec asks, what other creatures are good for homebrewing low-level encounters? Now, that was the focus of our stream 2 weeks ago, was low-level enemies. And really the answer to this question is pretty much anything you can imagine. Take a look at the enemies of challenge rating 1/8 to 1/2, and any of those are a good candidate for your low-level encounters. Anything that exists can be homebrewed, so take inspiration wherever you find it. Some examples, I've got a listing here of enemies in that challenge rating range. The Flumph, the humble Flumph. Imagine if you were doing something a bit more steampunky. You could turn that into like a steampunk automata where the body segment is like a little dirigible. You could homebrew that. The giant rat we've covered. Let's see here, something a bit higher level in the 1/2 range. Plenty of great enemies here. A cockatrice, a dark mantle, fire newts, gazers, gnolls. All of those are perfect fodder for homebrewing. So just look at them and use your imagination. Pull inspiration from whatever type of media speaks to you. If it's movies or comics or video games, bring that inspiration in and transform these creations in the style and the ways that we discussed last week. It's all great inspiration and a great starting point for you to start creating your own content. So thank you, Fennec, for responding to last week's show and leaving us that question. If there's anything you see today on today's show that you have a question about, please feel free to let us know. You can contact me via Twitter if you want to follow me at Matthew A. Siebert. You can also join our Discord server. There's a link just right down here in the description on Twitch. Join that, join the Homebrew Studio channel, and leave us any comments or questions you have. We will be happy to address them, and you might even find your comment or question here on the Homebrew review segment of a future episode. Now, this week's topic, excuse me. Oh, we got people in the chat. Hey Jay, hey Zach. Good to see you both. Welcome to the stream. Now, this week's topic may be inspired by me seeing Captain Marvel for the second time over the weekend, but who's to say? Anyway, let's imagine that you are a new DM, GM, and you really want to run a D&D adventure, but you're not a big fan of the medieval fantasy setting that D&D is pretty much rooted in. It's not really your wheelhouse. You love superheroes. You love superhero movies and comics and that kind of world of modern sci-fantasy, and you want to bring that into your D&D game. How do we do that? How do we adapt the content, which is very much designed for the standard D&D fantasy world, and make it fit seamlessly into a very different setting? Well, let's start by building off of last week's topic, which was low-level enemies. And let's grab an enemy so simple, so plain, it can easily be adapted to fit our modern setting. I will if the layout here allows me. Here we go. The humble, lovable bandit. Now, bandits are great. They are such a stock standard template that you can do just about anything with them, because when you break it down, it's just a person with a weapon who's out to do crime. That's really it. You can adapt that to fit any setting you want just by doing some minor alterations. Excuse me. So let's play around with a bandit a little bit. We can do basically just a simple game of dress up. Swap out some of the equipment to make it fit into a modern setting. So if we start with our stock standard bandit here, let's change the name because bandit isn't really a word you hear too much in modern settings. Let's call this a henchman. That fits more in our comic book genre. And it's still going to be a medium humanoid, still neutral, or possibly evil, depending on how you want to flavor it. Armor class, we're going to leave that the same, but we're going to change leather armor, because that's not something you see people running around with in a modern day setting. And we'll just rename that to a flak jacket. So this is an enemy that's very lightly armored. They've got a bit of protection in the torso area, but they're not super heavy armored. They're not going to present a huge problem for your superhero PCs. We're not going to bother adjusting their hit points, their speed, any of their ability scores. Those are going to stay about the same. Senses, languages, no difference there. But when we get down to our actions, we're going to need to adjust the equipment that they have and the kind of attacks they're going to be able to make against our heroes, because not a whole lot of people are running around with scimitars these days. You might have noticed. So, let's go ahead and change the scimitar, and we're just going to call it a knife. And that's fairly standard. That's something you might expect your stock standard henchman to have, is a knife. It's still going to do the same to hit. We're not going to change the damage. It's just reflavoring. We're recoloring the item. We're not changing it necessarily. Same with the light crossbow. We're just going to change that to a pistol. And that's really all there is to it. We're not going to change any of the other statistics. There are breakdowns in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide for firearms of a particular kind, if you want to pull those out and get the specifics of what a pistol or a firearm is supposed to do. I'm just going to leave it as is because we're not really interested in the minutia of it. We're just going to give it a general flavor of this is something that fits into a modern setting. So, just like that, we're done. We've got a basic, disposable henchman, the type that superheroes face on a daily basis and basically mop the floor with. They're nothing special. But we can't just leave it at that. let's see if we can get more creative and add some variety on... Logan, you expect your henchmen to dual-wield chainsaws? We can do that. But let's get some more variety on the kind of enemies that make up our big bad's army of nameless goons. Let's say this is a setting where there's some kind of mad science afoot. And what could come out of that? Well, my mind is going to beat-em-up arcade-style games. If you think about Dungeons and Dragons, Dungeons and Dragons, that's the game we're talking about. Double Dragon is an actual video game. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, X-Men. Actually, I wonder what Double Dungeons and Dragons would be like. Huh. But in those games, you have your stock standard enemies that just sort of come at you in waves, and you have to beat them up. They're nothing special. And then you have the big ones that come in, you know, the big hulking bruisers, and they hit harder and they've got more hit points, and they just add some variety and a little bit of extra challenge to the mix. So what are we going to do? How can we take our henchmen and move it more in that direction? And, you know, we're operating in this sort of mad science sphere. So let's say there's some sort of chemical that's mutating some of these henchmen to make them more big, you know, bigger and meaner. So let's take our henchmen here. I'm going to make a copy of that. And let's change it a bit. Don't know why my formatting is doing this. Okay. So let's say that this is going to be a mutated henchman. In fact, we'll call it a mutated brute henchman, because that's what they are. These are these big, muscly brutes that are just going to smack our heroes around a bit. They're going to be large, as opposed to medium. You always notice that the tougher enemies are bigger in video games for some reason. It's just that simple visual language. And instead of being humanoids, because they are mutated, because they're a little strange, I'm going to change them to monstrosities, if I can spell the word monstrosity. So now we have these large monstrosities, these mutated henchmen. Well, armor class, I think that's going to stay the same. And let's look at hit points and ability scores. Now, they're bigger, they're tougher, they're going to have more hit points than your standard henchmen. And we should also adjust their ability scores a bit. You've got a big mutated brute. They're not going to be as charismatic, so let's reduce that. And definitely not as dexterous, because they're big and heavy and slow. So we're going to reduce that. But to compensate, they are going to be stronger. So we're going to increase that, increase their strength, and they're going to be just generally tougher. So we'll increase their, whoops, that's intelligence. I meant to do constitution. So we're increasing strength, we're increasing constitution, and we're reducing dexterity and charisma to make up for that fact. So they're going to be big and heavy, not particularly dexterous or personality filled. So to change some things up here, their armor class is going to get reduced to a 10. And their hit points are going to go up, because this is now going to be a +4. So it'd be a 13. But that doesn't seem like a lot. That's not a big difference in hit points. So, well, one thing we can do is, because we've increased their size to large, so we can increase their hit die by an increment from a D8 to a D10. That's going to increase this to a 15, but it's still not a lot more hit points if a base henchman has 11. So what I'm thinking we need to do here is let's up their challenge rating a bit. Let's change them from 1/8 to 1/4. That means they're just an increment harder than our normal henchmen. And what that's going to do is, that's going to let us bump this up. So now they have 25 hit points. That's a meaty target. That's something that our heroes are going to have to really focus on and present a bit more of a threat, a bigger punching bag, if you will. Now, let's look at their actions here. We've got a knife and a pistol. But these are big, hulking bruisers. I see them as being just more unarmed, punch you in the face, crush you with their massive fist type of fighters. So, let's get rid of the knife. And let's just give them an unarmed attack. We'll just call this your basic haymaker. And it's going to be an unarmed weapon attack. And we're still going to be at +3 to hit because it's, or no, we're actually going to increase that to a +4 because we've increased the challenge rating here. And damage is still going to be 1d6. Doesn't seem quite right. 1d6 is good for a weapon attack, but usually if we're talking unarmed, we'd be doing d4s. And this is a large creature, so we're going to do 2d4. If it was medium, it'd just be 1d4, but being large, we're going to increase that to 2d4 +1, and it's now bludgeoning damage. So 2d4 +1, that's going to be an average of 5 damage on a hit. Now, as far as a ranged weapon, again, I see these guys as being unarmed, so they're not really going to have any kind of ranged weaponry. Instead, let's give them a special attack ability. What I'm thinking here is, if we remove this, what I'm thinking is these are going to be bad guys that come up and, using their immense strength, they're going to grab hold of a character and just try to crush them. So let's give them a crush attack. And, oh, geez, I don't even know what I did there. So, if we say the mutated brute squeezes one, let's see, squeezes a creature that it's currently grappling. So one medium or smaller creature. It is grappling. And then it just deals automatic damage because you're being grappled by it, you're being held, it just flexes and starts crushing you. So we'll just keep this the same as its normal damage. 2d4 +1. Crushing damage. So the way this is going to work is it's going to swing and try to hit people. But if it already has you held, it doesn't need to make that attack roll. It just automatically deals damage for as long as it has somebody held in its grasp. And it's up to, you know, one of their teammates to help break them out or for them to break out of the grapple to stop taking this continuous damage. That's interesting. That's going to make it a little different from just the stock standard enemies. But, let's see. I think we need to define how the creature grapples if we're going to make this one of its sort of core abilities. So let's add a special property here. And because I love the never-ending story, we're just going to call this Big Strong Hand. And we're going to define... Let's see. Based on the size of this creature, we're going to define that, first of all, if it has a medium or smaller creature grappled, that the creature is also restrained. They do look like such big, strong hands, don't they? So a creature grappled by the mutated brute is also restrained, and we need to place a limitation on how many creatures it can have restrained at one time, because it can't restrain an entire group of adventurers. So we'll say that the maximum our mutated brute can have grappled at one time is 1 medium creature or 2 small or smaller creatures. So basically it can like bear hug 1 medium creature, or it can grab 1 small or smaller creature in each hand and just squeeze the life out of them. And I'm pretty much happy with that. So now we've got a little bit higher challenge rating ability enemy, something that when it comes out onto the field, the PCs are going to take it more seriously than they would just your stock standard henchman. And it's got more hit points to back that up. It's got a special ability that allows it to not only deal automatic damage, but also sort of crowd control or incapacitate, not fully incapacitate because that's a different term, but restrain a hero during the fight, which makes things more complicated and a bit scarier for the heroes. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So, one thing I'll note before we move on is looking at a block like this, a box of information, it's easy to get restrained by the constraints of it sometimes. And you need to think outside the box, literally. So notice how our mutated brute henchman here doesn't have any kind of ranged attack ability, but that shouldn't stop us from saying in-game, as the mutated bruiser stomps towards you, its heavy footfalls echoing and quaking the ground, it rips a mailbox from the cement and hurls it at your face, yelling, "Special delivery!" And just like that, we're giving it an ability that it doesn't have in the text, but it feels appropriate to the setting. It feels appropriate to that kind of comic book beat-em-up style that this character would be present in, and yet it's not there. It's just, yeah. The point I'm trying to get is don't feel constrained by what's in the text. Feel free to riff and make it feel appropriate, even if it's not specifically there in the text. So, we've got a couple ideas here for enemies now that are going to face our PCs. The question then becomes, well, how do we adapt Dungeons & Dragons player characters to fit in a science fantasy setting? Well, mechanically, I don't think we have to change anything. It's just a matter of reflavoring those abilities and what's already present in the class and making it look like it belongs in a modern day setting and feels appropriate for our sci-fantasy genre. The easiest way for me, at least, to do this is let's try and line up examples of D&D classes with superheroes that resemble them. So, for example, we have our barbarian. Well, that's just the Incredible Hulk. Big, strong, no shirt, checks all the boxes. The rogue. You've got Black Widow, or perhaps Batman, depending on which Batman we're talking about. Stealthy, deadly, moves fast, strikes fast, is best when unseen and gets the drop on their opponents. The fighter, I mean, so many examples. You've got Captain America, Wolverine, Deadpool, Wonder Woman. These are all weapon-based attackers that can take a punch in return. Sorcerers, you've got Storm from the X-Men. The Artificer, that's just Iron Man. The Monk, well, that's obviously Iron Fist. That's just a gimme. The Warlock's kind of fun. Think about Thor from the Avengers. If you think about Mjolnir as like a Hexblade, sort of attachment. That's what he channels his power through. That's an interesting interpretation. And for the druid, we've got the unbeatable squirrel girl. Once we have these archetypes in our mind, at the game, I think what I do is I'd go to the players and ask them, well, what superhero do you want to play as? And get suggestions from them, get an idea of the type of abilities that their favorite superhero has, the superhero that they want to play as, and work backwards from there to try and find a class that's going to fit those abilities and skills. Now, it doesn't have to be exact, doesn't have to be perfect, but just close enough that they understand the connection, and they get how to flavor their spells and abilities to fit this comic book setting. Now, once we have our archetypes in mind, we can start thinking about how that flavor can be applied. So, something, for example, the fighter's second wind ability. Well, that could easily be Wolverine's healing factor, and the way his wounds just close up in the middle of the battle. The spell Scorching Ray is one of my favorites, and you can follow the usual description of it if your character is a Doctor Strange type that's just summoning cosmic fire beams from his hands, but it can also be a character activating their heat vision eye rays, or firing photon blasts from their fists. Comics are great for this kind of stuff. And so it's just a matter of creatively and inventively reflavoring these abilities to fit in a comic book setting. And it's just a matter of using your imagination. So, let's discuss. We've got quite a bit of time left, but I think this is going to be a topic that takes a little bit of time. Let's go into our open studio segment, and this is where I work with you, our lovely members of chat, to create a fabulous original creation, and we collaborate on its invention. So tonight, what I want us to work together on is, say we are creating this adventure for a group of players. And we've got some henchmen, we've got some bruisers, we've got an idea of what we're going to do with the player classes. What we need is a big bad. So I need some suggestions from chat of what our big bad is going to be like. What is their personality? What are their superpowers? What sort of supervillain is troubling our beloved city of Nerdtropolis? And this could be anything. This could be a sort of Lex Luthor, mad scientist. This could be a dastardly Magneto type. We can do a dastardly Ultron sort of robot. What do you guys think? Guys and gals and other. Jay is a fan of mad scientists. Alright, we'll get started with the mad scientist idea. And if other people want to chime in chat with ideas and suggestions, please do. So this is going to be Dr. Big Bad. Ooh, that's an interesting inspiration. Mr. Glass, Logan. Hello and welcome! So, we know our Big Bad is going to be... Yes, I don't know why you wouldn't trust somebody named Dr. Big Bad. So, we know our mad scientist is going to be super smart. Time manipulation. Ooh, I like it. So we have a mad scientist who's dabbling in time travel and time manipulation. So we know they're going to be very smart. We're going to bump their... Whoops, not +7. Good gracious. We're going to bump their intellect up to a 17, which is good. About a good place for a boss enemy to be. It's about a 17 in their primary stat. Now, are we going to say... If we're going to use an inspiration like Mr. Glass, then this is a character that does not have a particularly large amount of hit points. So we're going to give them a penalty to Constitution here. And we're going to give them pretty strong mental stats. So good wisdom. And if you're a big bad, you have to have decent charisma. Otherwise, how do you get your army of henchmen to follow you? So it's there. Not going to be particularly strong or dexterous. In fact, Mr. Glass is kind of the opposite of what I'd call dexterous. So we'll give him a penalty there as well. And... yeah, those look like decent starting stats for our big bad, and we can start to build around this now. So, if we say our big bad... see, our big bad is very intelligent, so knowing that they are not very physically strong, we're going to make sure that they have a decent armor class. A decent armor class. So now we're thinking about something maybe more like Dr. Doom. Very smart, very evil, but has that suit of armor protecting him. So let's go ahead and give them a decent armor class. The balance of that being, they're going to have a penalty to their hit points. Now, if we're imagining our party is going to be, let's say level 2, and that means we're going to want an enemy of about challenge rating 3. And at challenge rating 3, we're looking at about 98 minus 3 hit points. So on average, we're looking at 33 hit points. Not a whole lot, but this is a bad guy who's probably going to surround himself with a lot of henchmen as a protective buffer, a bit of a meat shield, if you will, and be good, well armored to make sure that they're not getting hit unnecessarily. Let's see, what does Logan have to say here? How about some sort of time manipulation device that can cause things to slow down around them, preventing them from hitting? Could be an AC boost, or allow him to decrease his speed at the same time, giving a higher dex by proxy. Very interesting. Yes, I think we'll give him one of his special abilities. It's going to be, definitely be time manipulation. And let's see, as far as senses and languages go, it's a basic passive perception of, that'd be 12. So, time manipulation. If we imagine that, let's say, maybe once per round, when it gets to his turn, Dr. Big Bad can decide to either speed up time or slow down time. And that's going to give effects for the remainder of the round. And there's going to be benefits and drawbacks to each one depending on which he chooses. So let's say at the start of each term, Dr. Big Bag can alter the flow of time. How do we phrase this? Oops. And then we have speed up time and slow down time. Now, if he's speeding up time, let's see here. Well, slowing down time is going to have some obvious benefits. It's going to, let's see. If time is slowed, all attacks against Dr. Big Bad, not Big Bag, have disadvantage. And all of Dr. Big Bad's attack rolls have advantage. Additionally, Dr. Big Bad's speed is doubled for the round. Yeah, you've got a good point there, Logan. I'm thinking is maybe we change this because it's hard to see a benefit of speeding up time relative to yourself during combat. That just makes everybody else move faster. That's not really going to help you a lot. So maybe we change how this works. So let's say at the start of each turn, Dr. Big Bad can use his slow down time ability, but we've got to have some kind of drawback to it. Maybe it's faulty and it doesn't always work. Maybe if it's turned on for one round, it has to be turned off the next round to recharge. Maybe it's the kind of thing we attach to like a Dragon's Breath ability, where they can use it and then they have to roll on a d6 each turn to see if it recharges. For now, what I think I'm going to do is let's just change this. So Let's see. It's an interesting thought from Tessa, speed ritual casting. Freezing time once per short rest. Could be interesting. But that's also very powerful if we think of it in terms of D&D abilities. If you think about Time Stop, like I'm pretty sure that's an 8th or 9th level spell, and giving that to what's kind of a lower tier enemy, that's a very powerful thing. But not necessarily out of the question. You absolutely can give very powerful abilities, say like once per day use powerful abilities to low level enemies, and that creates an interesting challenge for the player characters actually. Now an ability like Time Stop, because of the way it is written, any sort of attack you make or anything that interacts with or harms another creature breaks the effect. So really it would be used for something, somebody like Dr. Big Bad. It would be used to enable them to escape. And returning villains are always great. So we could bake that in as an idea that if the fight starts going really, really bad, Dr. Big Bad can time stop, run away, and then the heroes have to catch up to them another day. That's not actually a bad idea. Let's see, an ability like Quicken Spell, that's a very good idea. Haste versus Slow. Those are both very powerful abilities. But it's not necessarily a bad idea if we think about Dr. Big Bad not being a big hardy fighter, but the kind of guy who stands back and buffs his allies and debuffs his enemies. That's actually a very good thought, Zach. So let's play with that a bit then. Let's rewrite this. So we've got time manipulation, and we'll say that Dr. Big Bad can use his temporal interference time system to either cast haste on, let's see here. I believe haste is normally just a single target, whereas slow is multiple targets. Let's just double check here. Yeah, slow is up to 6 creatures. It's a 3rd level spell. Whereas haste is also a 3rd level spell, but is only 1 creature. So let's dial these abilities down a little bit and make them just sort of weaker versions of slow and haste. And so So we'll say he has this time manipulation ability. And once per round, he can use his temporal interference time system to either cast speed up on his allies or slow down on his enemies. He can't do both at once, so he has to choose to either buff his allies or debuff his enemies. And the way we'll say this works is a creature affected by speed up increases their movement speed by 20 feet and has advantage on all attack rolls. And then to counterbalance that, a creature affected by slowdown decreases their movement speed by 10 feet and has disadvantage on all attack rolls. So we've taken kind of the essence of the haste spell and the slow spell and just pared them down significantly so that this is the kind of thing that is being thrown out every round. It's not suddenly overpowered. So we've pared this down significantly, so it's no longer an AC penalty and a Dex saving throw penalty and the loss of your action or bonus action and all of that. And the increased spellcasting time that slow normally puts. It's just your movement speed decreases and you have disadvantage on your attacks. So I think that's more in balance and something that you can. Yeah, that's not out of line for the kind of creature that our lower level party is going to face, our party of level 2 adventurers. So then, just to fill in the actions, because we are almost out of time, my goodness. We'll say he has a ray gun, because what kind of mad scientist does not have a ray gun? And it's a ranged weapon attack. Let's see. Plus, let's see, 3 to hit. Range 100, 200 feet. On hits, deals. What would a ray gun deal? Probably 1d8. I apologize if you can hear my cat whining. They just got home from from being boarded yesterday because we were at CC over the weekend. So 1d8 minus 1 because of his bad dex. Radiant damage because it's a ray gun. So that's an average of 4 damage. If he hits you with his ray gun, which of course he would only do as a last resort, he's counting on his army of henchmen to stand between you and him. And that's a good start, I think. I don't know that this is necessarily finished. I feel like we could give Dr. Big Bad a few more special abilities based on that time dilation idea that we were playing with. But unfortunately, we are running out of time for today. So let me just say thank you all so much for joining us in the Homebrew studio. As always, all of the creations this week are going to be put up on our World Anvil page, which is titled Homebrew Studiopolis. We'll put a link to it in chat, Logan, if you would please. It's in the Discord conversation. You can find everything we create on stream there for use in your own games or for further inspiration. We are very, very lucky to be sponsored by World Anvil as a sponsor of the NerdSmith Network. Please check them out, Worldsmith? Someday, maybe. Who knows? But World Anvil is the most robust world creation tool on the interwebs, whether you are creating your own homebrew setting for your RPG or creating a world for your novel or other fantasy work. You can get a free World Anvil account. It's absolutely free to sign up. And if you want some special extra features, you can upgrade to a paid subscription. It is very well worth it, if you ask me. Now, as I said earlier, we'll be back in 2 weeks with the same time, 5 p.m. US Pacific, here on twitch.tv/wearenerdsmith. There will not be a stream next week because of WonderCon. Until then, let us know what you think about what we've created today on stream and how the stream is going so far. This is just our second episode. You can join us on the Discord. All the information is below. You can also tweet me. I am at Matthew A. Siebert. Please follow me. Follow at wearenerdsmith, which is the official NerdSmith Twitter. And you'll get updates on all of our fantastic shows that are on the network. Coming up next, we have Countless Heroes, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific. Countless Heroes is our West Marches style D&D campaign set in the homebrew world of Vale. And that's in just over an hour. So grab yourself some dinner and get ready to catch what we call the daytime soap of D&D streams. Has everything. Romance, passion, gay squealing. You'll find it all on Countless Heroes. But that is it for Homebrew Studio this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and good night.